As always, it is my pleasure that you join me for today's podcast of Second Chance Coaching. My name is Dr. Richard Lewis. If you'd be so kind as to leave me a rating and your feedback, I would very much appreciate it, and it will help others like you to optimally discover this podcast wherever you listen to this and your other favorite podcast. As you know, at Second Chance Coaching, we focus on seeing everyday life through the eyes of the returning citizen and highlighting the resiliency of the human spirit. I would love to work with you one-on-one, whether you're a returning citizen or coaching client seeking your second chance, or you're a representative of a business, college, or university seeking to integrate and support returning citizens in your respective organizational and learning environments. Please feel free to contact me via email at richard@secondchancecoaching.com or via Instagram at the Dr. Richard Lewis. Welcome again to another edition of Second Chance Coaching. As always, it is my pleasure to join you on another week of your reentry journey from whichever corner of the world you're listening from. We always remain humbled and excited that you've decided to spend a part of your week with us. I apologize to you for coming out so late this week, as it's once again been one of those weeks. We're at the stage of the term in which so many students are trying to feverishly obtain extra credit assignments, complete final presentations, study for final exams, those who are graduating, preparing for graduation, and those who continue to matriculate in school, completing their registration for the following semester. But before we continue, I want to send shout outs to our listeners in our Second Chance family. Our top 3 listening states for this week in the United States, once again, are California, Florida, and Georgia. And internationally, I would certainly like to welcome our family in the Czech Republic, France, and Saudi Arabia. As we're getting ready for the holiday season with the arrival of Thanksgiving in the United States this coming Thursday, my plans continue to be up in the air with family. But I know I'll be seeing family, but even as I record this week's podcast, there's uncertainty as travel is going here, there, and everywhere. But I'm confident at the end of the day, they'll certainly be quality Freud. This talking with my daughter about her new job, and she was stating how the professional atmosphere has been a complete upgrade compared to her previous place of employment. You know, I loved how she shared her challenges with me and her new work, and as well as her new work dynamic. I was even more fascinated as to how she was discussing how she needed long-term planning when it came to her job, and how she wanted to be more intentional with her next career moves, whether within or outside of the agency she works for now. In that intention, she talked about how she also needed to be strategic in making sure that her accomplishments are recognized and her development is optimally supported. My discussion with her was really not much different than the subject matter which was addressed in a small group meeting of returning citizens who had been home from incarceration and or rehabilitation for less than a year. That was a meeting that I was able to be a part of, and always blessed to have that conversation with them. And the discussion was really heavy on what they wanted to do, looking forward to the holidays, and what they've done so far as part of their reentry journey. Last year, right at this time, I recorded a podcast which really concentrated on breaking the unhealthy habit of overachieving. While there's nothing wrong with achievement, and even to a small extent, overachievement, you don't want to overdo it. If you don't want to overdo it, and you don't want to overdo it and risk burnout. While the beginning of the reentry journey can lead itself to burning yourself out because you want to do so much, catch up with so much, etc. and so forth, believe me when I tell you, even in the advancement of one's reentry journey, one can still struggle with inadequacies. For me, if I had to identify one area in which I have struggled, is the need to prove oneself. Given that I have traveled and continue to travel on this journey as a returning citizen, making sure I'm present and proving myself every step of the way is simply important to me, even though I am sure the only person really keeping score of what I'm doing is me. I remember when I first came home, I was doing simple work, for employment. And like I've said in the past, these were not jobs that were preparing me for a these were not jobs that were preparing me for a long-term career. But the lessons in life I received from being there were invaluable when I look back upon it. When I look back upon it and when I look back upon that time. At that time, I was dating someone who had a strong career track job at the time, let's say. And when we would have conversations and catch up with each other about our daily work and we'd have those back and forth conversations. And when I would speak, it seemed that my contribution to the conversation was not with was didn't have much value really, and it was probably due to the simplicity of my work or how I looked at the simplicity of my work. And then when she would talk, I would listen to all the consequential decisions and interesting things she would do in a given workday. Listening to her work made me feel very inconsequential. I allowed it to make me feel that way. And it made me doubt as to what I had to do on a daily basis, and wondered if it even had value and made a difference. Now, I was not looking for her to provide reassurance that my thinking was silly. But certainly, in our conversation, she was not providing that. Maybe unconsciously I was looking for that reassurance, but that was something that she was not providing, nor was it her place to provide that. But when I look back upon it, my stage and place in life at that time was in transition. And I was at the beginning of my reentry journey. And funny enough, rather than comparing myself to her, I really should have just embraced where I was in my professional journey. I had a job and I was free. I was not incarcerated anymore and unemployed. But I didn't compare it to where I was. I didn't compare me to me. I was comparing myself to her. But funny enough, when I was looking at my male brothers and my male counterparts, well, I realized they had kept pace on their careers and they were doing well. I didn't feel threatened by their advancement, nor did I really compare myself to them. I didn't. I just, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like that I wasn't going to be able to catch up with them. I imagine that in a romantic relationship, there's enough insecurity to go around that if you let it get to you, as I let it get to me, it could get to you. And I guess I just didn't want to feel like I was less in my partner's eyes. I didn't want to feel less as a man. If I wanted to be looked at as a provider one day, I didn't want to be looked on as less as a provider or a place of strength. So even though that partner I was sharing time with, I wanted to make sure that, or at least in my mind, I wanted to make sure that she felt that there was value in spending time with me. But nevertheless, I got past that, but then sometimes we find ourselves repeating our mistakes. As I advanced through my reentry journey, I then began dating someone else who was in the higher education space with me. And one would logically feel that at that point, and I'm more advanced in my reentry journey, I would not feel inadequate. But then again, yeah, I did. My partner at the time, she was pursuing her doctorate degree and was at a director level at her institution. For me, I was an academic advisor, and during the time we dated, I also be promoted and became a coordinator for the bachelor's programs. At the time, I was not pursuing any advanced degrees at the time. So once again, when it came to conversation, while we both talked about higher education and the similarities that we were in that space, I could not relate to the decisions that she was making professionally. And my mind was not being expanded at the time through the advanced academic research that she was doing. Now, when I started my career and advancing through higher education, because I would see what she was doing and I would wanted to look on the value of myself, as to how I valued myself, I would take on those extra projects, do the extra things, and juggle many things for the sake of wanting to prove to myself and to my family that they could be proud of me. I wanted my mother to say, "That's my son." I wanted my sister to say, "That's my brother." My niece to say, "That's my uncle," and my kids to say, "That's my daddy." I wanted to prove to significant others that I was significant in all areas of my life and that I was bringing value to their lives, and that being a returning citizen was really just a bump in the road, not a highlighted destination on my journey. As I indicated in the group meeting of returning citizens in that round circle we were at, I remember saying to them that there's nothing wrong with working hard and making progress, but always You have to monitor when it becomes unhealthy in our efforts to prove ourselves. Now, according to Very Well Health, trying to prove yourself does become unhealthy when it consumes a significant amount of your mental energy and it leads to constant anxiety about receiving validation from others, which could impact your relationships and well being due to all the excessive pressure that you put on yourself to perform and one's value and your value being completely tied to the external validation that you're seeking. Very Well Health tells us that the following are the key signs it has become unhealthy to prove yourself too much. Number one, that there's constant self doubt and insecurity. Feeling like you constantly need to demonstrate your abilities to feel worthy. Number two, burnout and exhaustion. Feeling drained from being in the cycle of proving yourself. Number three, neglecting other aspects of your life, such as relationships, hobbies, and personal well being. Number four, being hypercritical of yourself by holding yourself to lofty and unrealistic standards. Number five, fear of failure. That's big. Number six, taking criticism personally. Number seven, people pleasing behavior, going to extreme lengths to please others to gain validation. So instead of falling into the pit of quote unquote proving yourself too much, we could do the following. Number one, let's focus on our intrinsic value and recognize your inherent worth beyond your achievements and external validation. Two, set realistic goals that focus on your personal growth and improvement without excessive pressure on yourself. Number three, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself and acknowledge your accomplishments. Number four, seek support. Talk to a therapist, talk to a family member, talk to a trusted friend if you're struggling with feelings of inadequacy. Number five, develop healthy coping mechanisms. Manage stress through relaxation techniques like meditation or exercise. Prior to taking on these positive aspects that I just spoke to you, and I'm quite sure that's prior to what you probably have gone through, we could easily get into the vortex of being overwhelmed when we take on so much while we are out here proving things to ourselves. We could easily become overwhelmed. So once again, according to Very Well Health, being overwhelmed is an engulfing feeling of dread or worry often related to responsibilities, self-expectations, relationships, health concerns, and more. Feeling overwhelmed can be described as many small stressors, many small things piling up and making you feel like you can't endure any additional challenges. So here are some examples of causes of being overwhelmed. Number one, balancing work and family responsibilities. Two, being in an unhealthy environment or situation. Three, caregiver responsibilities. Four, external pressures such as job performance. Five, financial challenges, debt, or unmanageable expenses. Six, having high self-expectations or not having ways of reducing stress. Seven, health challenges of yourself or a close friend or family member. Eight, lack of sleep, physical activity, or other needs. Nine, not getting enough time for relaxation or activities that bring you joy. And 10, job stress or work-related deadlines. Being overwhelmed is certainly something that can easily happen when you're on the road to trying to prove yourself. I had dinner with my son's godfather last week, and we were talking about our lives and just really catching up in general whenever he comes into town. And in the midst of our conversation, I admitted to him what I have admitted to you on this podcast, that proving oneself and being overwhelmed goes hand in hand with me, because I've told him that even today, 20 plus years into my reentry journey, teaching as a professor at multiple institutions, working at the airport, being a reentry coach and consultant, being on the condo board, and many other things that I do to validate my value to me and to feel like I need to catch up on things that I missed out on, that I need to catch up or even get ahead, that things that I missed out on during my short time of incarceration and being on parole. My son's godfather is a medical doctor, so he also spoke to me about ways not to be overwhelmed. And he even shared his steps with me, which are as follows. He said, number one, you got to practice more positive self-talk. Don't feel like you have to catch up. You're doing what you're supposed to do and you're doing great. I told him that I've neglected being on the beach and doing stuff like that. He said, man, you got to spend more time outdoors, especially in South Florida, taking advantage of this great weather. Number three, he said, certainly continue to be active. Four, do what we're doing now. Connect with family and friends. Five, take part in hobbies and enjoyable activities. And six, prioritize accomplishing small, simple tasks. I did a podcast on this about celebrating the small victories. That's very important. And number seven, to spend less time watching TV and or social media. All these steps come into play because think about it, proving yourself and feeling overwhelmed, they can go hand in hand. And certainly, especially to those men that were in that group, that they had been home for less than a year, we really talked about, while you have the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm of accomplishing so much when you've been home for such a short time after being away for various amounts of time, you want to take it step by step and day by day. And believe me, that circle of support and trust and encouragement is definitely what they needed in order to sit there and move forward. And even though I'm advanced in my reentry journey, it's that encouragement that I needed as well. I certainly want to thank all of you. And I really love talking about these subjects as, like I said, when I sat in that group, it enabled me to be self-aware, and it makes me to be self-aware when I'm talking about it with you and reduce those negative effects of behavior that might have started from a good place. Wanting to do well and prove yourself and accomplish, it starts from a good place, but when it gets too much, it could become pretty negative. So I want to continue to thank you for your continued support and love of Second Chance Coaching. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for sharing my favorite part of the week with me. I want you to please continue to spread Second Chance Coaching to your friends, family, and loved ones. Thank you again for joining us thank you for joining us again this week. I always look forward to spending time with you, and we will be on time. We'll be on time next week on Wednesday. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining us here at Second Chance Coaching. In addition to coaching services for individuals and businesses, I'm also available for speaking engagements and workshops on criminal justice reentry, human resources, as well as organizational culture and leadership. Feel free to email me at richard@secondchancecoaching.com, as well as connect with me on Instagram at @DrRichardLewis. Remember, every day you are given this opportunity for your second chance, and I know you'll make the best of it. I love you all, and I look forward to connecting with you next time here at Second Chance Coaching.